does a piece that starts off just talking specifically about just the stock prices in general of basically the gaming industry as a whole. But Dustin, it kind of goes off into a couple of different companies and where they might be headed moving forward. Just at least, some speculation going on there as far as, how does all of this affect them in the long term?
Yeah, so the big one here is DraftKings and what's going on there. Outsized interest and always about DraftKings, which was at one point a darling of investors when it went public. The stock has fallen on hard times. I don't know what it's trading at today, but it has been under 20 for a little while here. And what people are looking at is whether there's a path. What's the path to profitability? And right now, DraftKings is, as we all know and have said on this podcast ad nauseum, is spending a lot of money. The way to get a profitability: one, you either spend less money, or two, you go get more money to try to continue growing market share. So. There's a lot of different ways that, what is DraftKings going to do is a big question right now. Are they going to go get more money? But are people going to go buy a bunch of DraftKings stock when it's been depressed? Is DraftKings at this point an M&A target? I think that's a legitimate thing as well. Whether somebody should look to acquire DraftKings and leverage the brand moving forward. So. DraftKings is an interesting one, and I'd highly recommend going over to read Brad's piece and details all of this, and really good read on where things stand with DraftKings, but it goes with this trend I think we've been talking about for several weeks at least about there's a little bit of a reckoning in the sports betting industry, and DraftKings is not immune to that by any stretch.
Adam, he also mentions PointsBet in the article.
Yeah, PointsBet is another company that I think has received a lot of chatter in the industry when it comes to what is the future for not just PointsBet, for all of these second to third tier operators in the U.S. Is there a second life, right? Do we see the market reset in some way after a few years if a major player like a DraftKings does have to I can't even get the words sell out of my mouth because it's just not the way they've operated for so long. But then again, we look at the article that Brad put together where you have multiple analysts talking about the fact that, the stock is down 70% over the course of a year. You're trading up at a high in the 70s. You've been trading down the teens for the last couple of weeks at the least. And, Jason Robbins made quite a bit of noise on Twitter, as he's wont to do from time to time, saying that if you are someone who sold DraftKings at the bottom, that he and his team are going to do everything within their power to make you regret that decision for the rest of your life. Okay. Sometimes not tweeting through it is also okay. But we look at the situation with PointsBet, as you led me into here, that's another company that might have 1 to 2 years of cash on hand at this point. They have some notable partnerships. They've spent a lot of money. They were kind of counting on Illinois being a place where they could get in and use the advantage of having in-person registration and having a really local casino. That blew up on them a little bit with COVID situations. So what does a PointsBet kind of company do as they see that their market share really isn't ticking much past that 5% mark anywhere? So that's a question I think for not only the industry to figure out is what is the lifespan, the life cycle of these companies that are, not really making much of a dent right now. And also a question for investors as to will they continue to bail out a company like DraftKings if they go back and want to sell more? The analysts in Brad's piece talk about the fact that might not be a very attractive option within the market given the state of the company right now. And the question that I'll bat back to you guys is to say what was interesting to me in the piece was those who said, well, if DraftKings just stopped spending today, they could be profitable next quarter. Right. But then they would lose market share almost instantly based on what we've seen so far in how this operates. Caesars is going to try some version of this, and we'll see how it goes for them. But it kind of feels like, yeah, you can say that, but you can't really do that.
Dustin, I guess the question here remains, right, is what would it take for everybody to get back excited about all this stuff again. I mean, at the end of the day, that was, you could still sports bet during the pandemic, and people might not have been going to casinos, and they might not have been going to restaurants, and they might not have been going to whatever, but you could still sports bet, and everybody got super excited about that. I mean, would it be, we all here assume something's going to get done in Texas next session. We think there's still things, tiptoeing around in California. Something eventually will get done in Florida. Is it one of the major states, going with online casino? Like, what do you think it is, and that might actually kind of regenerate some of the energy again?
Is that even enough at this point? I mean, we had, at some point, New York launching was already baked into DraftKings price, right? And then it launched, and it's not been doing great, and New York has some problems for operators, from the high tax rate to there's just headwinds there. I mean, if California were to open up and have a wide open market, which we're going to talk about that in a little bit, I'm not betting on that happening anytime soon, then that's a needle mover. Like California by itself, it would be, I don't know, without off the top of my head think about the numbers, but certainly like maybe half of all sports betting activity in the United States immediately, if that's the case. Somewhere between a small minority to a large minority to over half of betting could happen in California if we get a wide open market in California. That moves the needle. Casino, I think, moves the needle too. Again, this is these companies are all looking at the future. Sports betting, we're not lying, is a small margin business. You have to get a lot of people in the door. You're trying to get by on the edges. You're making 10% if you're doing really well, and sometimes less than that if you're depending on what's going on. But casino moves the needle for sure. Especially New York's not going to get there this year. It looks like it has a shot next year. Those are the things I think those markets open up, but there is still long-term sustainability. Like Caesars is a great example. We had a really good short-term here. We spent a lot of money. We acquired a lot of customers. We you can even see in the New York numbers that they didn't retain all of those customers, or they're losing market share already by pulling back on their promos and their ad spend. So I don't know what moves the needle anymore. It's maybe it was just it was way too blown up, and things have gotten back in line, and we get to a normalization. I think DraftKings is probably, as we sit here, probably undervalued, but I'm not going to sit here and make stock recommendations or prices. But it's clearly a better company than the stock market indicates, and certainly probably not as good of a company as the high price share when at the height of the pandemic was letting on.
Yeah, Adam, look, the thing that we've talked about a lot of times on here, right, is that the end goal, if for all of these companies, if you gave them all, truth serum, would be the online casino aspect of everything, right? I mean, we know that is a super high margin business, and that is where it's easiest to make money in a short amount of time. So, I mean, kind of like Dustin said, I don't, there's no stock advice going on or anything like that. But I mean, that is definitely the long-term goal for all this. I guess the question is just, can they make it to that long-term goal?
I'm not sure that they can. I'm not sure anyone can, because the appetite for online casino among legislators and regulators is never going to be what the appetite for sports betting is. It just doesn't move the needle among the populace the same way that sports betting does, right? And of course, with sports betting, you have these external forces, especially with the leagues, especially pushing for it in a way that no one's ever going to be pushing for iGaming. And iGaming on its own, I think, is going to continue to evoke the old boogeyman of click a mouse, lose your house in a way that sports betting really doesn't. So yeah, I'm not sure that you ever get quite to that point. So the question then becomes, all right, so if these new markets open, why do we believe these new markets look any different than the launches we've seen in other markets? And to me, that comes down to two things. One is product, and the other is fragmentation. And when we talk about product, we've already seen FanDuel start to talk about it, right? We saw Peter Jackson, the CEO of Flutter, say, basically, yeah, they went off with you for a little while with that cash that you flashed, but baby, they're always going to come home to us in the end because they like what we've got, right? They like our product. And the fragmentation part is what we talked about last week with New York and the fact that they're going to open up to 16 licenses if this bill passes that's going through right now. And the question is, who's going to take them? And who's going to pay the money to get into the market knowing that they might not be able to move the needle past 3 or 4%? So in the end, I still think it's way more about that product than it is about fragmentation.